Good evening. I'd like to reconvene the meeting of Community Unit School District 300 Board of Education on this Tuesday evening, April 23rd, Shakespeare's birthday, 2019. Mr. Fiorentino, please call the roll.
Stevens.
Here.
Scarpino.
Present.
Miller.
Present.
McNicholas.
Present.
Lopez.
Present.
Garcia. And Fiorentino. Present.
Okay, thank you. Before I turn it over to Mr. Hyde to introduce our pledge leaders, I want to let parents, guests, people know, please feel free to roam around the room and take pictures of your student. The room is yours. Get a good picture, but please do not block another person from taking pictures. Thank you. Mr. Hyde.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, members of the board, members of the community and staff, thank you for being here this evening. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Miss Nikki Berkey, principal from Lincoln Prairie Elementary School, who is joined this evening by her fabulous students who will lead us in our pledge.
Good evening. It is my sincere honor and pleasure to introduce these outstanding student leaders to you tonight. These students are our student council members for Lincoln Prairie Elementary. I'm going to read their names, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Toulon quickly to talk about the wonderful things that they do in our school building, and I'm pleased to share them with you tonight. Anya Ahmad, Jane Alderson, Max Daly, Jordan Dillard, Emily Kogan, Henry Cranbuell, Jason Mills, Casper Nowacki, Ella Person, Abby Retzker, Sophia Rojas, Emma Schwartz, Jaden Smith, and Bianca Veal. And again, I'd like Mr. Toulon to come and share a few words.
Thank you, Mrs. Berkey. Thank you for having us today. My name is Alex Toulon. I teach second grade over Lincoln Prairie, and I am proud to represent our school student council with these amazing students. Each student here today began their student council journey with a campaign. They didn't have to shake hands and kiss babies, but they did have to create flyers and speeches and manage to earn the most votes amongst the peers in their classes. Right away, they were recognized as leaders. As a member of student council, they used those leadership skills for the benefit of our school and our community. During the month of October, National Bully Prevention Month, they brainstormed and implemented ways to curb bullying and promote kindness and respect in our school. The service project they chose this year was to gather donations for the Animal House shelter in Huntley. With their assistance, our school managed to fill 4 cars worth of paper towels, soap, and food for the animals at the shelter. In fact, donations from Lincoln Prairie families filled the entire lobby at the shelter. I'm so proud of the leadership skills these students have displayed and grown throughout the year, and I thank you again for helping me recognize their accomplishments this year. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on. I am adding onto the agenda item number 14.5, which is going to be second closed session And there may be action to follow, and that would be item 14.51, and that would be employee action, employee discipline action. Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Stevens?
Question? So are you removing item 13 then?
Yes.
You just replaced it for 14.5?
Yes, you are correct. I'm
Yes.
removing 13, is now going to become 14.51.
So I would like to amend that motion to approve the amended agenda and the item 13 deletion.
Okay, second?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Mr. Fiorentino?
Stevens.
Aye.
Scarpino.
Aye.
Fiorentino, aye. Lopez. McNicholas.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Okay, moving on. Item 6.1, District 300 Quantum Learning Award. Mr. Hyde?
Yes, ma'am. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Sherry Douglas.
District 300 Board of Education, district leadership, and staff and community members, good evening. My name is Sherry Murphy, although Douglas sounds very nice, but it is Sherry Murphy, and I am here today to share with you an award from Quantum Learning. In February, Quantum Learning hosted its very first international conference where people came from all over the world to share their experiences with quantum learning, and at the end of this international conference, we had an award ceremony where we honored and acknowledged our most committed and courageous partners. I am here tonight to acknowledge the effort and commitment of School District 300. For those of you who do not know, Quantum Learning is an education, education courses where educators attend and gain greater senses of awareness so that we can be better in the classrooms to serve our students. It all began back in 1997 by a person about as tall as this, and her name was Audrey Lakin, and she was one of the most passionate and powerful, courageous people and powerhouses that I've ever met at that size. There were about 8 teachers, and we started in the PD room. How are you? We started in the PD room at Westfield, which was probably very close to brand new at the time. And we had this incredible experience together. And after that, summer after summer, we packed the gymnasium at Westfield School and then many other schools around the district. So many of you may have seen in the school buildings hanging these keys that are known as the 8 Keys of Excellence that are from Quantum Learning. So I thought, what better way but to acknowledge District 300 through using the 8 Keys of Excellence to help explain the reason for the award this evening. District 300 has been committed, and one of our keys is commitment. Summer after summer, year after year, we continue to have programs to help educators continue to better themselves. Quantum Learning not only serves classroom teachers, but leaders, paraprofessionals, custodians, front office staff. If we interact with students in the building, we are about creating a culture where students feel safe to take risks and feel safe to push themselves academically. And we know that culture and cognition go together. Without that culture, we don't get as high levels of cognition. So not only are they committed, but through our experience together in our journey, it has been a journey over these past 20-something years, because sometimes there are naysayers, and it is challenging to take a look at ourselves to make a change that is better for our students. But District 300 has continued to stay the path and not taking some of the things that were said. For example, taking a simple strategy that might not fit a personality, known as the power whoosh, and say that quantum learning is a power whoosh or a snap or a clap, when in fact it's not. It's all about creating that culture for higher levels of cognition. And they continue to go through that and fight through that and continue to bring us in knowing that deeper level of understanding. Currently, with folks who are here currently, Lindsay Jonas was the professional development director a few years ago, and not only did she just take a moment to understand what this was because teachers were talking to her about it, she put herself through training and she just sought to understood what this whole thing was. Now we currently have Liz Freeman in the position, and they dedicate Saturdays where teachers are coming in and they are being trained on Saturdays, so such a high level of commitment. Failure leads to success is another key, and understanding that failure doesn't mean you did something wrong or you are a failure, but simply you've tried something, it didn't turn out the way that it was expected, and you learn from that feedback. So District 300 has had some bumps in the road of how, teachers reacted or whatever the case may be, and they've continued to persevere. District 300 has been flexible, as our trainings used to be 5 days, and then the structure changed. So we honor their flexibility. Speak with good purpose is another key of quantum learning. And not only do they speak with good purpose of spreading the word of the training and encouraging educators to take a look at themselves and what they currently do well and what they can do to enhance their experience for their students. But they also do things like encourage others to speak with good purpose. District 300 has many things in place, and I've seen it in action, even in our trainings, where teachers and folks can have a voice, and they are listened to, and they are heard, and they take that feedback, and they try to make changes for the better. Speaking with good purpose, a good purpose is to move things forward. So conversations can be tough and brave. That is a good purpose, to move things forward. District 300 has demonstrated ownership, owning and standing behind choices. District 300's integrity. So what we know with how we talk about integrity is what is important to us or what we value, and then our behaviors that follow. We know that here in District 300, according to the strategic plan goal number 1, we want to develop great teachers and great leaders. So since we value that, our behavior is that we continually encourage trainings that support that and how we become our best selves. So when those two things match up, we then put them on top of our head, and we have integrity. So District 300, unwavering integrity to continually hold high excellence for its leaders and teachers and staff members. Most exciting is the key of This Is It. And This Is It is basically making the most of every moment. District 300 now is taking the trainings and empowering their staff to now become the voices, to now become the leaders of the district, to continue to encourage us to be our best selves. So it is my great honor and pleasure to present this is our Crystal Key Award to Superintendent Hyde, the Board of Education. Thank you so much for your commitment to quantum learning. We appreciate your partnership.
Thank you so very much.
Yes, Mrs. Lopez?
Before you run away, I just want you to know that I was a graduate of the quantum teaching learning for District 300 teachers. Was so impressed with it, I sent all 3 of my daughters to super camp. They went for 2 years in a row. One went back as a counselor at super camp, and that one that went back to as a counselor struggled with school, was held back in 1st grade, and ended up finishing high school in 3 years because of super camp. She called me today from Texas, said, "Mom, I want to send my son to super camp." That's how amazing it is. So thank you for all you do.
Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Tommy Parisi.
Good evening, Mr. Hyde, Board of Education. It's my great pleasure tonight to bring to you some amazing student athletes and an amazing Adapted PE staff who, a couple Saturdays ago, put together our 9th annual Adapted PE track and field meet. I'm going to turn it over to Julie Beelan to speak more about the event.
At the end of the day on Saturday, April 6, 2019, one of our athletes told his dad, "This was the best day ever." That was his highlight. Everyone else involved, their highlights were many, like seeing smiles, amazement of family members who witnessed their son or daughter long jumping or throwing a softball and hitting the side wall at Dundee Crown Fieldhouse, and running as fast as possible, or even just finishing the race. A huge thank you to the Dundee Crown staff for hosting our event again, and to all the volunteers. Some were community organizations such as the AMS Beta Club, Boy Scout Troop 166 from Fox River Grove and Algonquin, and Troop 46 from Lily Lake, and all the athletes that participated in our 9th annual Adaptive PE Track and Field Meet. Some are here tonight. Representing the red team is Aiden Rago from Eastview Elementary. Okay. Jillian Gregg from Eastview Elementary, representing the blue team. Micah Akers from Algonquin Lakes, representing the blue team. Alex Newzel from Eastview Elementary, representing the blue team. And Stephen Munson from AMS, representing the white team. Just as a reminder, this Friday we have our Adapted PE Adapted PE Field Days. I'm getting so mixed up. There's so many things going on. It's Field Day this Friday, April 26th. It's from 9:30 to 11:30 at Eastview. That's if anybody wants to come. They're all welcome to come. And we also have a short video that we're going to show from the track meet.
Thank you for inviting me.
I saw you all on the other queue.
I'll be here.
I try to never miss that event. This year, I was pleased. I had competing interests with my son's basketball tournaments, but I was able to be there at the start. What was so impressive was the number of volunteers. I believe they actually, if they had a concern with volunteers, is that they had too many, which was great to see, because we saw students, as she shared, from across the district who were there to support our students and did an excellent job. And thank you to the tremendous number of staff who also gave up their time to help support this. And Mr. Parisi and I have had conversations about continuing to push to grow this program and be more inclusive of all of our students and create opportunities potentially during the school day that would allow us to do that as well. So outstanding job. 5th year in a row I've been able to participate and witness this, so outstanding. At this time, Ms. Sheila Karate Kagan. This is the clue.
Good evening, Superintendent Hyde, members of the Board of Education. I'm so honored to be here once again. I feel like I was just here. Maybe I was 2 weeks ago. But for a very new and very special reason this evening, every year a certain number of student performances are selected for participation in the Illinois High School Theater Festival. And this year, not one, but 2 D300 productions were selected for this honor. So standing before me right now, we have the students from Dundee Crown High School, whose performance of Clue was selected to perform at the Illinois High School Theater Festival. And I would like to introduce one of their directors, Ms. Julie. And Mr. Barrow always just calls her Julie Mass. I had to look down at what her name is. Ms. Julie Massaniso to present.
Hi, so like she said, I'm Julie Massaniso from Dundee Crown, and this is our cast and crew from Clue on Stage. We had auditions for our show in August. It was the second week of school, and our show went up in October, and we were one of around 50 schools that applied for performance at the festival. So the festival is around 100 high schools or maybe more from all around the state that go to celebrate the performing arts. And out of those 50 schools that applied, only 7 were selected to perform. And I could not be prouder of this cast and crew right here that we got the chance to shine on stage. It's a real testament to their talent and their dedication and the wonderful community that we have at Dundee Crown. We're so proud of you guys. So without further ado, I will introduce them. So we have Alexis Bonham, Carolyn Burry, McGuire Day. Oh, I don't know what we're doing.
That's okay, just keep announcing. They're gonna do all
Okay.
She's out.
Sorry. Lindsay Gertz, Jordan Glover, Hattie Hickrod, AJ King, Bella Knapp, Nathan Colert, Chloe Catulis, Mackenzie Linden, Grace Lasau, Aaron Lavalia, Katie Miller, Logan Newshafer, Braxton Richardson, Spencer Sheik, Ethan Schmidling, Brandon Smith, and Lauren Turchin. Go, Carolyn. Go. There you go. Yeah, I'll go last.
Just gonna hang out here.
But you were dead half.
Yes.
But great job. Loved your shirt. Ms. Karate Kagan.
Okay, And now I have the honor of introducing our Hampshire High School students and their production of The Internet is a Distract. Oh, look, a kitten. Unfortunately, Mr. Napper wasn't able to be here this evening, so that gives me the privilege to introduce these amazing, wonderful students to all of you. Again, this production was one of those very few that was selected for presentation at the Illinois High School Theater Festival at the University of Illinois this year, and we are so proud of each and every one of you. It was a tremendous effort on all of your part and a wonderful performance. So with us this evening, we have Mia Koken, Tavian Covington, Madison Fergoli, Hector Ibarra, Mikey Kilborn, Rachel Kustra, Kelly Kozina, Samantha Leon, Sydney Ludvigson, Sydney Lyon, Abby Peters, and Kayleen Sessi.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam President, that concludes student and staff recognition.
Thank you. But it does not conclude our good news.
Does not.
So moving on. Dundee Crown High School's Fight the Stigma campaign aims to increase mental health awareness for students and staff. As part of the campaign, students recently participated in a series of workshops titled Get Out of Your Head, designed to help students clarify their values, understand healthy and unhealthy relationships, and provide help for others. The Get Out of Your Head workshops provided students an opportunity to temporarily hit the pause button on stressors, such as homework and exams. Who would have thought those were stressors? Students could choose from 36 workshops and activities, including an activism fair, a presentation hosted by the D300 Food Pantry, and cleanup and maintenance activities at the Fox River and Kemper Park. During the workshops, several students also participated in the National Day of Silence for LGBTQ awareness and advocacy. District 300 would like to thank all the staff, students, and community partners involved in planning these workshops. Thank you.
On April 13th, the Dundee Crown High School Jazz Ensemble participated in the Illinois State University Jazz Festival, which featured over 30 bands from across the state. Dundee Crown earned a score of 93.67, the highest score of the competition and the title of Grand Champion. As a result, the Dundee Crown Jazz Ensemble performed as the opening act for the festival's grand finale concert. In addition, with hundreds of students participating, a total of 5 awards were given for outstanding improvised solos. I apologize in advance for pronunciation of these names. Dundee Crown students Brian Ortiz, Jonathan Wurchlager, Alyssa Trebat, and Ben Canner took home 4 of the 5 awards. Congratulations to the Dundee Crown Jazz Ensemble.
U.S. Representative Sean Casten visited Dundee Crown High School on April 17th to meet with students enrolled in the school's electrical technology pathway. During his visit, Representative Casten observed students participating in a preliminary round of the Ideal National Championship, a competition to determine the best electrician in North America. The competition provided students with the opportunity to apply the skills they have been learning in the classroom to a real-world setting. During the preliminary round, students were challenged to wire a functional circuit in less than 90 seconds. While speaking to the class, Representative Caston offered insight from his former role as a company president and CEO, stating, "Whatever you do going forward, having the experience to build things with your hands, you will use that forever." District 300 would like to thank Representative Caston for visiting Dundee Crown High School. The district would also like to commend Dundee Crown teacher Nick Linden for organizing this wonderful event.
District 300 would like to congratulate Westfield Community School teacher Michael Lodico, who recently published a novel. The book, titled Portals, took 6 months to write. Michael provided the following summary of his book. Portals is set in the future, in the year 2060. It takes place in Buffalo, New York, and focuses on a high school junior named Lou Sills. Lou is interested in all kinds of science and science fiction materials and visits a seminar on wormholes. A group of bullies push Lou into an experimental wormhole where he is transported into an adventure around the universe. Portals can be purchased starting May 31st online at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Portals will also be available in local bookstores. In his spare time, Mr. Lodico is a terrific science teacher at Westfield Community. He will attend the May 14th board meeting for formal recognition.
District 300 would like to thank everyone who participated in our annual D300 Relay for Life event held on Friday, April the 5th at Jacobs High School. Relay for Life provides a deeply meaningful opportunity for our district to honor those currently fighting or those who have fought cancer, while also supporting their family and friends. Over 270 individuals participated in this year's Relay for Life, and District 300 is grateful for your support and your dedication. District 300 is also proud to announce that we raised over $50,000 in support of the American Cancer Society. Thank you again to our staff and community for your participation and support. District 300 would also like to send a special thank you to Shelley Nackey and her Education Services team for organizing the event.
April is Autism Awareness Month, and District 300 supports the individuals and families in our community who are impacted by autism. Autism is one of the fastest growing developmental disorders in the United States, affecting 1 in 59 children. The autism spectrum disorder impacts the brain, which can cause differences in communication, social skills, and cognitive ability. Because autism is on a spectrum, no two individuals with autism are alike, and many demonstrate different degrees of impairment. There are no blood tests or imaging tests that can detect autism. Diagnosis relies on behavioral observation and screening. District 300 schools are commemorating Autism Awareness Month. For example, at Eastview Elementary School, each student and staff created a puzzle piece to represent how each person is unique. Classrooms are participating in door decorating contests, and bulletin boards are decorated throughout the building. Some classes have visited with Stephanie Stanton, Eastview's LEAP teacher, to engage in a question and answer session, learn about sensory tools, and discover how students can build friendship with students who have autism. For more information about Autism Awareness Month, please visit autism-society.org.
Hampshire High School's industrial, business, and family and consumer science departments collaborate annually to involve their students in Skills USA, a national vocational contest organization. Skills USA offers over 90 different vocational competitions where students compete regionally at the state and national level. This is Hampshire's 11th year of participation, and their Skills USA success has grown from a single state qualifier during the first year to 20 state qualifiers in 2019. During this year's competition, students competed in automotive service technology, power equipment technology, diesel technology, CNC milling, CNC turning, welding, team welding, job interviewing, cabinet making, cosmetology, and culinary arts. District 300 is proud to announce that Hampshire High School has 2 students who qualified for nationals, Marcos Perez, who qualified in culinary arts, and Seth Roberts, who qualified in diesel technology. Marcos and Seth will represent District 300 in Louisville, Kentucky for nationals. Seth also received a $10,000 scholarship from Universal Technical Institute for his win. In addition to national qualifiers, 7 Hampshire High School students finished in the top 10 in the state of Illinois. Hampshire High School CTE teachers would like to thank their administration, families, and community for supporting their students and Skills USA.
Madam President, at this time, we have a topic on the agenda. I'd like to take a moment to express our sincere appreciation on behalf of the school district, the staff, and obviously everybody in this room to Ms. Kopaz for her 12-plus years of service, if I counted correctly, covering 2 different stints on the board. I believe your first one was 4 or 5 years, and then 8 years the second time around. And so as a very small token of our sincere appreciation for all that you've done, because as you know and members of the board know, at times it is a thankless job, the amount of time, effort that you have to put into reading things, understanding legislation, working at times with a difficult administration to help manage and ensure that our district continues to provide unique opportunities for all of our students. We want to say thank you very much. We do have a small gift and a token of our appreciation for you this evening.
I also think.
Yes, please.
I think some board members may have some comments to make as well. Okay, I'll start.
We want to watch.
You want to watch? Okay.
Yeah, we're watching.
Okay. I'll hurry. Big, heavy.
Is it a Mary Kay cosmetic case?
It's not pink. It's not pink.
It's not pink.
He's doing a new Cadillac.
What?
He's doing a new Cadillac.
I get one in June. Okay.
Okay then.
Awesome. That's beautiful. Thank you for your time. That's beautiful. And I am a clock fetish. You didn't know that? I collect different clocks all over my house. So this is perfect. Thank you very much.
So for all of those 12 years of time that you don't get back, there's your time.
That's right. That's right.
So you leave a legacy here with the district, Susie, that took us from certain places to where we are now. Full-day kindergarten, art in the elementary school, additional AP classes, balanced budget. You worked with 3 different superintendents, several different board members. You leave us with a void from not having your insight and your input, not only from that teacher's heart, but from the parent's heart. We've been through a lot. First grandbabies, deaths, weddings. I can't imagine going through this again. It was hard enough the first time that you left. It's going to be pretty difficult here, but you leave a strong legacy. When you sit there, when we sit there at graduation and we look at the students that are graduating, or you see all those new kindergartners that are just starting, it's when you think that all that time that you're not going to be able to recapture wasn't time that was lost. It was spent very well, and I thank you for all of your time.
Thank you very much, Ann.
Thanks. We'll go down this way.
I first met Susie in 2004 when I was hired as the associate superintendent, and shook her hand, and we have been through quite a bit, and I just want to say thank you. You've done a super job. Thank you very much.
Well, I first met Susie in 2006 when I first joined the school board. And something has been bothering me since 2008, which we resolved tonight. We were in the old, what is now Oak Ridge. That's where our office was. And Susie switched seats. She was sitting next to me. And I always wonder, why did she switch seats? I know I didn't have body odor. I don't think I said anything offensive. I couldn't figure it out. So tonight I actually got up the nerve and said, Susie, now that this is your swan song, you're going to tell me, and let's just say we worked it all out. I understand it. It was nothing personal.
It wasn't against you.
It wasn't against me. It was a wonderful thing. But I do remember that when I first joined the board, Ann and Susie were both there and were very helpful to me. And I've always thought you were one classy lady. I still think you're a classy lady. There was never a doubt in my mind where her heart and her head were, and that's with the students. And I think, though, as the years have gone by, she's found it more difficult to speak without getting emotional. But that tells you it's coming really from the heart. And I doubt very much that we will ever see her likes again. And it's been a pleasure to serve with you. Thank you very much, Susie.
8 years went by fast. And Susie was one of the first board members that I talked to because I knew she had been a board member. And I remember 8 years ago, although we were running sort of against each other, I never felt that way. She, welcomed me before she was reelected. And I thought, wow, what a classy person. But I think that we used a term, public servant, and I would just say that Susie Kopacz is the epitome of a public servant. She serves with her heart. She serves with her mind. She serves with incredible passion. She's extremely prepared. She often, as we read the packets as board members, she'll catch things that, like, I read it, why did I miss that? That happens very often with Susie. I think the thing I'll miss the most, though, is her heart, as Mr. Stevens said, sitting next to her and just knowing how she's feeling. I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss sitting next to you and having that just deep caring and deep emotion. And sometimes it's not even when you speak. I just feel it. It just works its way over here as board members. I think that, I will miss you an awful lot. I know I tried to talk you out of it. But I think that the district will miss you a lot. As a previous board member said, that we won't see the likes of a Susie Kopacz. We're all replaceable, and someone will come and do great work sitting here representing District 300, but not quite in the way that Susie Kopacz did it. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being so kind. Thank you for being kind to my family and my daughter. You're just a wonderful human being. Thank you.
So I first met Susie Kopacz as a student, standing at the podium with many emotions. If nobody really remembers what I'm referencing, I was giving a very heated speech in front of the board during public participation.
I remember.
I know you remember. And I just remember being terrified. But very passionate, and also that I could tell Susie Kopacz was listening. If nothing else, I knew that she was listening and she was hearing me. And that made an impact on me as a student. It made me want to get more involved. It made me feel like it mattered. And that has continued to be true as you welcomed me onto the board just 2 years ago now. And I think that I'm going to continue remembering and being inspired by you and having you as a role model for a strong, passionate woman in politics.
So I spoke briefly on behalf of our staff, since we're sharing I remember stories, as my family likes to call them. So I remember being grilled by Ms. Kopaz at the Anvil Club. When I was first being interviewed, it was my second interview, and we were there, and I was being asked a lot of questions from various board members, and my wife was present, and Ms. Kopaz was very patient throughout the whole dinner. It's amazing how much I remember, and ultimately asked a question that I actually paused for a second because I thought that I had been addressing that the entire time, and Ms. Kopaz asked where the students were in all of this as we talked about the district and what I saw and what my interests were. And that has always stuck with me. I will say I have met my match in you when it comes to intellectual prowess. I would say you have exceeded me as it relates to your level of professionalism, the manner in which you conduct yourself, the courtesy that you extend to everyone, your openness, your willingness to listen, your willingness to embrace new ideas and new concepts. I will tell you that as an agent of the board, as your employee, as a superintendent, I have always felt supported, even though you ask really good questions, tough questions. And those are the things that a lot of members, community members, never see, are the tough questions that get asked on the phone or through email or through other correspondence. And you have always been a strong advocate for voice in our district, and that is something that will continue with us. And I believe that you'll be very pleased to see how that will be reflected moving forward in our new strat plan and other initiatives. And hopefully we can continue to tap you from time to time as needed to gather your input, because you speak with an educator's heart and an educator's passion, and as a result you garner a lot of respect for that. And so for that, as a fellow educator, I say thank you, and for all your years of service.
But I get to rebuttal. Okay, we'll just go down the line. Ann and I were on the board together when I first came on board 12 years ago. She was the secretary, and we did have changing of the guard. We had different presidents of the board, and there was a lot of, well, you remember, David, it was just a lot. And Ann always was the diplomatic one, and I thank you for that, because tensions can rise and tempers can flare, and Ann always kept us stable. So thank you for that.
Yeah, tell my brothers that.
And I always loved having a lawyer on the board, because you kept us aware of our legal rights and responsibilities and made us think differently, and I appreciate that tremendously. And I've loved getting to know you as a person and your family, and participating in, like you said, weddings and losing our parents and everything else we've been through, so thank you. David, I do remember when you first came on board. I remember our bus crisis. Remember that? Oh, yes, the buses, vividly. I remember when I decided to run for the board the second time that David helped me and looked over my petitions to make sure everything was in order to support me. And then he was holding a family bingo night and invited me to come to the bingo night to meet the parents so I could be well known. And that was a tremendous support for someone who was running for a political office. So thank you for that. Joe? I will honestly say that when we first met, we did not see eye to eye.
It's true.
It's true. Even though we had the same gray hair and wear glasses. And, but I have grown to respect you tremendously. Because you always speak your mind, and you're not two-faced. And I respect that, because you will state your opinion and tell us how you honestly feel. And I remember my second time back on the board, first time, closed session, they were discussing property for a bus barn in Hampshire. I don't know if you even remember that. Remember? And the developer was going to gift us this property. And I'm sitting there, and I know I can see that property from my back window, and I knew that was not good property. We were being sold down the river, and I really just let it out. And Joe turned to me and goes, well, why don't you tell us how you really feel, Susie? So since that moment, we have grown as board members and see more eye to eye, and I'm thankful for that. So thank you for being a good friend. Steve, you are the epitome of class. I suggested to him one time he should be a pastor because he's so full of love and compassion. You have that. I can always tell when he's thinking. He gets this look on his face, and you can just tell those gears are turning around in his head. And then out pops this question or this comment that is so thought-provoking and really guides us down a direction that we need to think about. But I respect the fact that you are passionate about the public and the community, making sure that the students and the community are heard, that you want to represent the community well, and that's huge. This isn't a political position for you. This is a service. So, and you have a great family. So thanks. Mary, I don't know, were you in that group of students that I came to visit at Dundee Crown High School? Mike, do you remember that? Mike asked me to come to Dundee Crown. It was an ice storm, and I drove all the way from Hampshire to Dundee Crown in ice. And were you there that we met in the cafeteria? That we met in one of the offices, I think. I thought maybe you were there, part of that group of students. I think she was she? She planned it.
I did. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the first time I met you, and I was impressed with you then because you were so mature for a high school student. I was very impressed with you. And then seeing you speak publicly and knowing that you're passionate, and then to know that you have gone into this profession as a teacher and that you're representing the community here. Kudos to you, girl. You go. You keep at that and keep strong because the world needs women like you. Fred? I forgot about that night at the Handball Club. I remember my ride home, talking to my husband on the phone about it. Because choosing a superintendent is huge. And like I've said, I've served under 3 of them. And all 3 had their wonderful characteristics and their passions and their focus. But I think I'm more like-minded with you than the others. Because I think we're both all about the kids. But I do remember going in to visit you at Hampshire High School, and I had an issue I wanted to discuss, and I had written it on Post-it notes. And I kept going through my notes, and he said, the first thing we need to get you, Mrs. Kopes, is a bigger piece of paper. And I thought, there's a man with a sense of humor, and I like that, and I can work with that. So thank you for all that you've done to move this district forward and everything else that you've done for this. I know it's in good hands. I don't think I would leave if I didn't feel and trusted that it was in good hands. And to the staff, you guys rock. You really do. I don't think the general public knows all that you do behind the scenes to keep it working and to keep it working well and to make sure that everything is done right. Shelley, I've enjoyed working with you at Cambridge Lakes and seeing your passion for students and special needs is just amazing. All of you, I could go through name by name to all of you. But I don't want to pass up the opportunity to stress the importance of our teachers, because they're on the front lines. They're the ones every single day that know that they might have to be a mandated reporter that day when they see a student that's abused. They're the ones that get to see the light bulb go off when a kid says, get it. Or they get to sit in the audience when they see their students performing on a stage. And I'll just end with this, so maybe you really know where my heart is. I collect not only clocks and timepieces, but I collect apples. And a lot of people think that's because of being a former teacher, and it isn't at all. My father-in-law, well, let me start it out this way. When I did my student teaching, I lived with my future in-laws. And I noticed that there were apples in the refrigerator and apples in the cupboard and apples on the kitchen table and apples in the living room. Everywhere you turn around, there were fresh apples. So I asked my future mother-in-law, why in the world do you have apples all over the place? And she said, because Joe said the thing that he missed the most, that was her husband, my future father-in-law, in prisoner of war camp for 3.5 years, was apples. And I promised he'd never go a day without an apple. Well, being a history major and a history teacher, I had the awesome privilege of, while I lived with them, being able to sit down with Joe Kopaz and ask him about prisoner of war camp for 3.5 years. And he shared with me. And until the day he died, I was the only person he ever shared that with. He shared with me how he was in the Bataan Death March. And because he was strong and healthy, they put him on the back of a truck to save him for hard labor, but all of the other weaker soldiers, they walked along behind the trucks. And as he was riding along the back of the truck, he looked down and he saw a buddy of his from his old hometown. And so he reached out and grabbed him by the hand and pulled him up in the truck. And when they got to their destination, they counted heads, and there was one too many. And they figured out it was Joe. And they beat him within a pulp, just minuscule, of losing his life. And he survived. Then they put the surviving soldiers on the bottom of a coal tanker in the Philippines and shipped them to Japan. It was a 3-month trip. And they were in the bottom of a coal tanker on top of coal, raw coal. Dying men. Once a day, they would lower down a bucket of water that was not pure or clean and rice in the shell for about 300 men, and they had to share it. And as men died, their bodies just had to stay there. And he lived like that for 3 months. Survived it, got out, was put in a prisoner of war camp. Every single day he had to go out and do hard labor. He broke his ankle, he had scurvy, he had rickets, he had dysentery. There were 12 men in a hut, and in that hut, if one of the men died, they would cover up their body and pretend that he was still alive so that when they brought their 12 little cups of rice and water a day, they could share that one extra cup of rice. He went into the Marines at 225 pounds and came out at 98 pounds. When they put them on board a ship and freed them to send them home, the Navy cook said, "We'll cook whatever you want." He was like a short order cook, and everything one of those prisoner of wars wanted to eat, prisoners, they ate it, and then promptly went up on top deck and threw it all overboard because they couldn't stomach it. And when he came home, he was an alcoholic. He was depressed. I'm sure he had PTSD. And his father came up to him while he was hung over in bed and pulled up a chair and said, "Joe, someday you're going to want to get married and have a family. And this is no way to live your life. I know you've been through hell, but you can't live like this." And then his dad got up and walked away. And he told me, "Susie, I knew then I had to change." Here was a man with an 8th grade education. He went back, became an electrician, then became a plumber, got a job, got married, had 4 kids. One is a doctor, one owns his own sales company, one's a nuclear engineer, and the other one's my husband. A wonderful man in his own right. He was vice president of claims for an insurance company, and he could fight with the best lawyers. But what he told me when I was student teaching, because my student teaching advisor, his method of discipline was sit down and shut up. And I would come home every day and complain about the student teaching advisor. And he would say, "Susie, you never meet a person you don't learn something from. What you're learning is how not to teach." And from that day on, I took apples as my symbol that I can bear fruit, that I can share with other people and remind them of their freedoms That's why we have our kids in our schools, so that we can have freedom that those soldiers fought for. That we could all be, I mean, there's Granny Smith apples that are sour, and there's Red Delicious apples, and there's all kinds of apples. And I don't mean to sermonize, but I just want you to know that I have had the most wonderful 12 years of my life serving on a school board, to know that I'm imparting wisdom to students so that they can have an education. If he could have just an 8th grade education, look what he did. Those students need an education. And I felt so passionate about representing the parents and standing up for those kids that my 12 years of service has been an absolute honor. So next time you see an apple, think of me. Think of Joe Kopacz, who almost gave his life, and that we can all be more fruitful and care about kids and teachers alike. So thank you for my time. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
We have one more person who had to step out. Mr. Williamson, if you would come to the podium, and then we can recognize Ms. Kopacz.
Just be really, oh no, there it is. Mike Williamson, 24 Francis Avenue, Crystal Lake. So my board requires, like it's literally a requirement of my position, that when a school board member decides to ignominiously step down from the board earlier than they're supposed to, because we were planning on you being a board member, I think the outside bet was 2065. So I'm required to come and speak about it. So against my will, and I say against my will because 2065, I had money on that. And I was going to win too. But against my will, I'm here saying goodbye to Susie Kopacz. And so I want to start by explaining. So Mary Mae Nicholas really did plan that day out. And we made Susie do the attendance line at the beginning of the day. We made her go to clubs before school. She went through classes. I think she followed Mary to Mr. Black's chemistry class, which must have been fascinating. Sandra's laughing. We had her go through the nurse's medication line in the middle of the day, and we kept her going all day long. And she had been a teacher, and I still remember the look on her face when we got her at the end of the day. Last 9th period was over, or the end of the day was over, and we were going to have her go to clubs, and she goes, "Can't I just go home now?" And I was really proud that we had wore Susie out, because she'd already done the teaching gig and was like,
I was leaving for California the next day and had to go home and pack.
Okay, wait a minute. You don't get to make commentary during the middle. You can comment after. So, but anyway, it was fun getting to do that. But what was more fun was getting to go back to the IEA when they said, well, you know, something you can do is you can invite a school board member. And I'm like, yeah, not only did we do that, here's the schedule. And I brought the schedule the kids had made. I didn't make that. The kids made that schedule. You know, she also shadowed a custodian and looked at parts of the building. We did this tour where you went and looked at parts of the building that nobody ever sees. We didn't get her on the roof. I tried. I really did. But what became totally clear to me, and then through me to all those people with whom I talk, was that this was someone who is a consummate educator, and not just a teacher, a consummate educator that's willing to be involved in every piece of the educational process, whether it's protecting the district from a bad piece of bus barn property, you know, to making sure that Ann Miller's shoes actually are something she can walk in, which sometimes they're not. We all worried about Ann with that, you know, to calling me up and being like, seriously, why aren't you pushing harder on this issue for your members? Okay, you know you're in trouble when a board member calls you as union president and says, why aren't you pushing on this? And I can out you on that now because you're almost done. So, but talk about being my conscience in a certain sense too. So my board took a vote, and none of us are talking to Susie for a year after tonight. Unless that's, you know, out over drinks. So there was a question at Pepsi, of course, because, you know, school function. But there was a question about, now that you're done, and now that it's no longer a conflict of interest, are you going to join Uber or Lyft so we can get rides in the pink Cadillac? I really did at one point, like, come up with a whole set of machinations so that I could get a ride in the pink Cadillac. Yeah, I did. I know, but I worked it out so it looked like I was just like, Susie, I can't get there from here. But seriously, you know, I one time took notes under a table, like, watch out, she's cagey. She knows I have an agenda, right? You know, so all that. But that's the piece from my board, and that you have been a consummate voice for educators, a powerful voice for our teachers and our community and our students, all of whose interests are really the same thing, since the moment you walked back onto this board, right? And it was an amazing thing for us. Like I said, I got a lot of heat. I actually was asked, I said, when I told my board earlier in the year, Susie is not running again, someone angrily said, why didn't you convince her otherwise? I'm like, well, and I started to make excuses, and I'm like, you know what, I probably should have tried. I'm sorry. Okay, and I mean that sincerely. But here's the other thing I have to say, Susie. You, for me personally, a few years back, we all took this walk one day in December, and it was this big traumatic experience and all that. But just a little bit before that, we had some pretty contentious school board elections. And you personally, for me, represented hope on this school board. Hope that we would change a trajectory that we were on to fight all the time. And I have to thank you because you did that.
Thank you.
And I'm not saying you did that all by yourself. There are lots of other people that did that. Everybody remembers me and Ann standing next to each other in Westfield's parking lot when Ann kept stepping off the thing and being like this tall instead of this tall. Yeah, well, I know. But it was funnier that way. But, you know, everybody, this whole board, all of you, including the people that have just joined, including the people that will just join in the next couple of days, we've come so far as a district. And I remember Susie and Steve sneaking into the room when we were trying to pick superintendents and asking us who we liked the best. And like Hank Giamato glaring at us over the thing like, do not talk to the board. They didn't really stop them. They just called us later. But, you know, it just, the fact that we became a group of people, an administration, a teaching corps, a community, a student corps, some of whom are now on the board, which, by the way, I'm still really proud of. But that we became a group of people all doing the same thing and going to the same place. And that place is to continuously and constantly make the education and the possibilities of all of our 21,000, whatever it is, students better all the time. So as I said, I'm not giving you the personal credit for that because it wouldn't be fair, but I am telling you that I didn't have hope that that would happen. And it was something I really badly wanted, even back when we were fighting like crazy, because that's where I think we need to go as a universe, not just here. But coming the day when you got elected, being able to go back to a group of people and saying, but no, there's hope. We know Susie Kopatz. And we know that she's going to do what's right by the community. And by the community, I mean all of us. So from my board, my executive board, and my representative council, thank you for your service. And from me, personally, thank you for making me feel like I could continue to do this insane work of bringing kids up every day and saying, but you can, but you can, but you can. And I'll take that ride in the pink Cadillac later. Thanks.
All right, deal. Thanks, Mike. Didn't mean to run the meeting so late. I apologize. Okay, free rides in the pink Cadillac after the meeting. No, wait till June, I get a new one.
Hey, Madam President, members of the board, we're transitioning to superintendent's report. At this time, I'd like to bring Mr. Emmerson to the podium.
Before you do that, sir, I have a statement from Kim that she has asked me to read. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Kim Garcia, as you know, was not elected to the next term and made the decision not to be here tonight, but asked me to read this statement. And so these are Kim's words that she sent to me, and I have agreed to read. I want to take this opportunity to thank my fellow board members, the amazing faculty and staff throughout the district, the administration, and most importantly, the students and families of District 300. Thank you a million times over. I consider myself lucky to have been given the opportunity to serve you for almost 4 years. While I may be unhappy with the race result, it is not because of who won, but because I have lost the opportunity to continue to support D300 as a board member. I am certain that the current board members will continue their great work for the district and hopeful that the new members will bring their ideas and voices to the party as well. I will reserve my personal comments for private moments with those who have meant so much to me during my time here, but I do wish to publicly thank Ann Miller for her mentorship, friendship, and guidance throughout my time on the board. Ann, words cannot express the depth of my admiration and respect for your commitment to the district and those you call friend. You continue to selflessly and tirelessly work for those under your care, and I know that you count each and every student in D300 among them. You are an inspiration to me, and I can only hope I have given another opportunity to serve my community as you continue to serve yours. I knew going into this race that there was a possibility of my losing, and determined early that I would never handle a farewell tour. So I'm pulling a Donna Bordson and quietly letting the next member take their seat. I will miss you all very much, but rest assured I will continue to champion this very special district and all of you. Sincerely, Kim Garcia.
Thank you.
Mr. Emerson.
Ms. Kopacz, I want to thank you for all your time and work on the committee and on your committee work and also with the board, so thank you very much. Good evening, Board of Education, Superintendent Hyde, and community members. I'm here this evening to kick off the Boundary Committee's work for the next 10 months. The district has 3 primary goals when reviewing boundaries: maximize boundary building occupancy, maximize transportation efficiency, maximize programmatic efficiency. Based on the 3 goals listed above, the schools were placed into 3 categories: red, yellow, and green. Red signifies a school that will be investigated for potential change. Yellow signifies a school that is on the watch list for potential change in future years. Green signifies a school that has no foreseeable issues with the 3 primary goals. The category designations will change from year to year for schools depending on all the factors that go into making a potential boundary adjustment. The idea behind using the category system is so that the Boundary Committee can be transparent with the board and the community on which buildings the committee is looking at for potential changes. The Boundary Committee consists of members from numerous teams throughout the organization. Board Policy 730 provides the Boundary Committee with guiding principles supported by more specific actionable items in the Administrative Procedure 730 AP1. When a change is considered, the administration will present 3 to 5 options to the Board of Education. In an instance where there is only one viable option, both the superintendent and Board of Education president must approve that only one recommendation be brought forward. The board has the opportunity to accept, reject, or modify any proposal. A summary of the accepted proposals will be sent out to all the parents affected by the recommendation. Also, the proposals will be made available to the local media. At a date and time in the future, a public meeting will be held where the presentation is reviewed with the public. A final recommendation will be brought to the board to be voted on. The following are the action items that the Boundary Committee will follow when a new housing development is being proposed. When a new housing development is approved, the Boundary Committee will evaluate the impact of the estimated student count generation from the development in relation to the currently zoned schools' available capacity. When the development will have a negative impact on the existing school's capacity, the administration will then present to the Board of Education the recommended school boundary for the new housing development. The Board of Education has an opportunity to accept, reject, or modify the proposal. The most recent example of this is the Watermark development in Elgin, which was previously slated to attend Gilbert's Elementary, then Dundee Middle School, and then Hampshire High School. Using the new development procedure, the district was able to step in prior to families moving into the homes and change the boundary so the students will now attend Sleepy Hollow Elementary, Dundee Middle School, and then Jacobs High School. The Boundary Committee uses the following guidelines for potential boundary changes: Maintain 1.5 miles boundary around each school as a walking distance to the school. Try to make whole subdivision adjustments. If a whole subdivision adjustment cannot be accomplished, then the houses facing each other would be grouped together and the boundary line would be behind the houses. Use natural boundary breaks. Some examples of this would be rivers and major highways. Place a value on shortest traveled distance, miles driven. Attempt to create vertical articulation between grade levels. Maintain contiguous boundaries. And evaluate the impact to bus route efficiency. Before you is the timeline that was presented. So right now, where we're at in the timeline is the April timeline, obviously, and we're presenting to the board the recommendations of the buildings that will be evaluated. May through August, we'll develop the options for the recommended red schools. In September, we'll present the options. And then September through October, we'll hold the meetings with the community members to discuss the options and gather feedback. And then in November, present the final recommendation or recommendations to the board for approval to be implemented for the next school year. The 5 schools identified that fall into the red category are Hampshire Elementary School, Gary D. Wright Elementary School, Lake in the Hills Elementary School, Westfield Community School pre-K through 5, and Dundee Crown High School. 7 schools were identified to fall into the yellow category: Eastview Elementary School, Gulfview Elementary School, Lakewood Elementary School, Meadowdale Elementary School, Westview Community School 6 through 8, Liberty Elementary School, and Lakewood and Algonquin Lakes Elementary School. Both the red and yellow schools were originally identified during the fall enrollment presentation and verified this spring by the Boundary Committee. Next, I'll be talking about each of the red schools individually as to why they were identified. For each of the elementary schools, you'll see 2 charts, one showing enrollment and one showing available classroom sections. Please remember when looking at the enrollment and class section charts that the district has class size caps that force us to open us new classroom sections even though the school might only have grown by 10 students in total. For Hampshire Elementary, our projections have them with less than 2 classrooms available starting next school year, and that trend stays constant for the next couple of years. They also are projected to reach a high enrollment mark of 478 students for school year 2022. For Gary D. Wright Elementary School, our projections have them with less than 2 classrooms available for the 2021 school year, and the building will run out of space starting the school year 2023. They're also projected to reach a high enrollment mark of 972 students for school year 2024. As you might recall, last year, Gary D. Wright was identified as a yellow school, and this year was moved to a red school. For Lake in the Hills Elementary School, our projections have them with less than 2 classrooms available starting the 2020 school year, and that trend stays constant for the next couple of years. Also, they'll have a high enrollment mark of 546 students in 2024. For Westfield Community School pre-K through 5, our projections have them with less than 2 classrooms available starting this school year, and that trend stays constant for the next couple of years. They are also projected to reach a high enrollment mark of 376 students for the school year 2024. For Dundee Crown High School, our projections have them over capacity starting this school year. They are also projected to reach a high enrollment mark of 2,587 students for school year 2020. Dundee Crown was identified as a red school last year as well, but as the Boundary Committee worked through the process, it was decided to postpone any decisions being made for the 1920 school year. To help provide some perspective on the future growth within District 300 over the next few slides, I'll be talking about the housing developments and the projected growth of student enrollment. The following is a graph that over the next 5 years, there'll be 22 new or continuing housing developments within our district, the largest numbers of the developments coming from the village of Algonquin. From the housing developments, the district is expecting 1,374 new students. As you can see by the graph, the largest number of students are coming from the Hampshire and Pingree Grove developments. This graph depicts the proposed student impact to the elementary schools. The schools that would be affected the most are Gary D. Wright and Hampshire Elementary School. Both have been identified as red schools. This graph depicts impact to middle schools. The biggest impact will be to Hampshire Middle School. The board approved a boundary adjustment to Hampshire Middle School for the 2019 school year in anticipation of this increase. This graph depicts the proposed impact to the high schools. The biggest impact will be to Hampshire High School, which is currently identified as a green school. Next steps. May through August, the boundary committee will be developing boundary options for the 5 red schools and talk about what that impact could be. In September, I will be in front of you again presenting the options. September through October, the district will be scheduling meetings with the community members to discuss options and gather feedback. In November, a final recommendation will be presented to the board. None of these proposed changes would go into effect until school year 2020. Does the board have any questions about boundaries and what was just presented?
Dr. Scarpino?
Jason, when was the Casarda study done?
Casarda was done
school year.
It was last school year, I
Last
believe,
school year.
wasn't it? And typically those numbers are good for what, 3 years, then after 3 years? Would it be advisable to do another Casarda study?
Not at this time. Again, that Casarda study was done to inform the board committee, the boundary committee last year, at the end of the last school year, beginning of this school year, or when we made the decision to modify the Hampshire boundaries. It also provides 3 levels, as you know, a low and a moderate and a high. We currently utilize the moderate growth trajectory. If we were to find that enrollments exceeded or we started to see developments where the number of bedroom units within that exceeded some of the known variables, we could always request a new revision or a new Casarda study to be conducted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Harkin?
We are using current enrollment and updating the projections outside of Casarda. So what we've been doing is doing a cohort survival. So the numbers that are actually in front of you are updated beyond the Casarda report as well too, and do factor in the new subdivision. So I feel fairly confident that right now the numbers you're looking at are accurate and are separate from what are part of the Casarda projections. And just as a reminder, as part of our master facility planning process, we are also discussing how we will handle that should we choose to look at additions to schools or other opportunities to house these in coincidence with this process as well too. So certainly this is not suggesting that boundary changes are the only solution for where we have some issues related to schools approaching their maximum capacity.
Can I ask a question?
Mrs. Lopez?
Maybe you don't know the answer to this, but how would an enrollment at the charter school, if they were to draw from Pingree Grove area, affect the numbers? Has that been considered? It has been, okay.
Any other question, Mr. Fiorentino?
Jason, would you explain, you mentioned there were 22 new housing developments within the district, right? Slide 15. Explain the relation between slide 15 and 16, just so I understand. Are they one-to-one? So are they color-coded so that that number of students are representative of those within that boundary?
Yes, so if you look at Algonquin's that blue color.
Right.
You have the Pingree Grove being that darker orange color, Hampshire gray, West Dundee with the yellow, Gilbert's red, Elgin green, East Dundee with the light purple. So we kept that color scheme as we move forward. So that if you look at Algonquin, there have 10 new or continuing developments. For all those 10 new or continuing developments, they're going to produce approximately, based on our formula that we use, the Naperville model, which gives us a formula saying how many bedrooms, what type of housing development it is. If it's apartments, condos, single-family homes, we can plug that into the formula, which produces the number of students that we would project to come out of those type of housing developments. So out of the 10 housing developments, we are projecting, based on the Naperville formula, 304 students to come out of that those housing developments. Conversely, if we look at the Gray Hampshire, of the 5 developments in Hampshire, we are projecting, it's a bigger development, obviously, we're projecting more, 442 students. So it's really dependent on what type of model of homes are being developed and what type of the community. If it's an apartment community, with the Naperville formula, you're not going to get as many students that come out of an apartment community, and that we're seeing 2 apartment communities, that one's being projected, the Fred apartment community, which is right next to the Rack House Center over there, downtown, down the street from Randall Road, right next to that is like an apartment community that's being proposed just now. So does that help explain and answer your question? So it's a kind of a one-to-one comparison with how many developments versus how many projected students will come out of those developments.
Any other questions or comments, board members? Thank you.
Okay. I have the next item as well. For the next year, the district will be undergoing some programmatic changes with the dual language program. Starting next year, all Perry Elementary dual language students will be attending Meadowdale Elementary School. And all Meadowdale non-dual language students will be attending Lakewood Elementary School. This adjustment will create the district's first dual language only building at Meadowdale Elementary School. On April 4th, letters were sent to students' families informing them of the change, and public meetings are scheduled for April 24th for Meadowdale families and April 30th for Perry families. With Meadowdale becoming a dual language only building, the district would like to explore changing the name of Meadowdale Elementary School. In order to accomplish this, we need to look to Board Policy 4150. The first step in this process is for the board president to appoint a special committee to consider nominations and make a recommendation to the board. At this time, I'm turning the discussion over to Ms. Miller and Mr. Hyde about renaming Meadowdale Elementary School.
So just for the record, I asked Mr. Emerson to include this. There is no intention at this time to address this topic this evening. However, it is important to make sure that we have identified the potential board policy. Now that Meadowdale has become or will become a dual language center school, there potentially might be an interest on behalf of the board and on behalf of the district to explore a naming option to label it as a dual language academy, but we would not have an interest in deviating from the current name of Meadowdale. There is no interest in that whatsoever. It is simply a naming convention to give it more focus on the programs that will be housed there that will truly continue to benefit our students.
So you're looking at something like Meadowdale Dual Language School?
That is correct.
Okay. So that's something that we can put on at a future date to have a discussion regarding that.
Again, the interest, since we were talking about rezoning and boundaries, and both of these schools will be affected by that. Essentially, the Meadowdale boundary is eliminated as far as a traditional boundary, because now it becomes a district-wide school of choice for families who apply and are accepted. But then there's a primary feeder there with students within the community as well. So there is an opportunity in the future for us to explore that option, but that is not on the agenda to be discussed immediately.
And so something along those lines of people moving into the community, seeing Meadowdale Elementary School, might be thinking they're moving next door to an elementary school, and having a name that is more consistent with what the building really is something we should at least have that discussion.
Correct, because typically the terms of academy or magnet tend to eliminate some of that misconception that they would be moving into a neighborhood school. Although, admittedly, Lakewood is within half a mile, quarter of a mile for some.
Like the DeLacy Center.
Correct.
Okay. That will be something that will come up on a future.
In the future.
Okay.
Yes,
moving on, we have a draft budget. Does that fall under educational plan?
Yes.
Before Susan makes her presentation, I'd just like to say that if you recall last year, when the budget was presented, we said yellow flag, pay attention. And I'm imploring the board to pay attention to what's in this budget, participate in the discussions, ask questions. We really need the board input on this budget. Thank you, Susan.
So good evening, President Miller, members of the board, Superintendent Hyde, staff, and community members. Tonight, I'm here to provide a brief update on the FY 2020 budget. Any changes that were made since our last board meeting are highlighted in red. So therefore, the things we're focusing in on tonight, we'll go briefly through the presentation, is we have made some revisions to the fund requests, as well as in those how they factor into the future budget and projections. As I shared previously, we are projecting a slight surplus for the FY 2019 school year of $754,000. And as a reminder, the district's largest revenue sources are property taxes at 66%, and our greatest expenditures are salary and benefits at 62%. Our budget assumptions have remained the same since the last presentation, and our projected surplus prior to the 2020 request is estimated at $4.8 million. As a reminder, all of our budget requests were aligned to and broken out to the elements of the evidence-based funding model that the state recently adopted in our strategic plan. Updates for the budget request related to the core elements of the evidence-based funding include those items listed in red above. We have eliminated the request for 23 PE teachers as it appears that this mandate will not be implemented for the FY 2020 year. Therefore, you see those crossed out. We have reduced our request for core intervention teachers by 3 FTE. And we have added a request for 16 FTE to address counseling and social emotional needs for our students. Overall, this is a reduction of 10 FTE, or approximately $1 million since our last presentation. Updates for our per student elements of the evidence-based funding include an increase of $100,000 for our dual credit tuition to support the growth in the enrollment for this program. We found that out after our last presentation. We wanted to make sure that that got captured because we know that truly is a program that's benefiting our students. And lastly, updates for our budget requests in relationship to per student. Did it change? No, it did not. Sorry. To our additional investments include the reduction of 4 teachers in relationship to low-income pupil supports at $257,000, as this reduction is offset through the request of the previous 16 FTE to address counseling and social emotional needs, where we feel that that would be better directed. Overall, if you look at the bottom line there, the budget requests have been reduced by almost about $900,000 and return us to a modest surplus of $462,000 for the FY 2020 budget. With these reductions, we will have a balanced budget through FY 2024, and we will maintain our fund balance target of 30%. At this time, I would ask if you have any questions or feedback related to the proposed request. And as has been our past practice, we are asking for your tentative approval tonight so we can begin advertising the requested positions with an eye to attract the best candidates for the positions. However, you won't have a formal approval of the budget until September, which is our normal process and adoption timeline as outlined in the school code.
Susan, can you go back a couple slides, please? Right there.
Mm-hmm.
I think I understand what you were saying, but I just want you to go over again the low-income pupil support. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So what has been happened is when we came up with the 16 FTE, here in relationship to addressing counseling and social emotional needs, we've pushed those positions into that line item to give us flexibility of where we want to, because, and I guess I'll turn that over to Mr. Hyde so he can explain, better where he's feeling they're really in alignment with the same needs, but really they're just being repurposed up into that line item.
It doesn't have anything to do with Title I support. It has everything to do with the fact that at middle school and high schools, our ratio, as we discussed during the last board meeting, is far too high for us to continue to adequately support our students. What Ms. Harkin has tried to do consistently throughout her budget presentations is align it to the components and initiatives outlined specifically in EBF. But again, the reference to it being for Title I and things, that is not applicable here. These are not Title I federal dollars. They are not eligible to be applied across the entire district. And we have to be quite careful to ensure that we're not supplanting. But it falls under that initiative or goal area under EBF for reporting purposes and under our strategic plan.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so there's no formal vote, but I'm not seeing or hearing any controversy right now. So board members, if they have any questions or comments, they'll direct it through you, through the Finance Committee. Okay. Moving on, Mr. Hyde, does that conclude superintendent report?
It does, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 9 is public participation. We have one gentleman who signed up, Mr. Joe Pauziak. Puiziak. Please come to the podium, state your name, address, and you have to be 18 years or older, or have legal guardian. And
I got an ID.
That's okay. I'll trust you. And please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. And it is not the board's habit of entering into dialogue. We are here to listen to you.
Understood. Again, my name is Joe Puiziak. I'm a resident of Algonquin. My daughter graduated from Jacobs High School last year, and she's now a student at ISU, studying to be an elementary school teacher. My son is a sophomore.
And your address is 2654
I'm
Lauren
sorry, yes.
Court? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I'm sorry. Yes, so with that said, just sitting here first time I've attended a board meeting, and it's wonderful to see what you're doing, what you're going on, and I appreciate everything you're doing. And there's many good things going on in District 300, and I'm really appreciative of that, sincerely. So please know I'm not here to gripe or complain or point fingers at anyone, but I do have a concern. And the concern is regarding the use of Chromebooks in the classrooms. I'm all for technology. Technology has changed my life. This isn't just a phone. This is a tool that I use at home, at work. So I appreciate it. And children need to learn how to use Chromebooks. It's very important, technology, that they're well versed in it. But as much as it can be helpful, many times it can become a great distraction. And I think even detrimental to the education of students in the classroom. I've spoken to my teachers. Every time I've got a parent-teacher conference with my daughter, with my son, I've attended. I think it's very important that parents are involved with the teachers and take responsibility for their children's education and support teachers as much as possible. In speaking with them, I found that my son has often been distracted by Chromebooks and the access to games during classroom time. If it was just my son, I wouldn't be standing here right now because I take responsibility for raising up my child. But in speaking to a number of teachers, they've said to me, oh, it's not just your son. It's many children that are repeatedly distracted, whether it's by cell phones or by the Chromebooks. And I said, well, can't you limit access to games and things? Because many times the teachers say, pull out your Chromebooks and start working. Many times the children, when they don't feel like studying or working on the classroom material, they start playing games. I'm not opposed to video games. They can be fun. I've played some. I play some with my son. It's entertainment. It's a good way of relaxing and enjoying that. But when it becomes an interruption to a child's education, not just my son's going to be graduating in 2 years, and to make any changes will probably take longer than that. But I stand here to bring some attention to you. You may already be aware of this, so don't want to be telling you something that you already know. But I stand here not just representing my son and the students, but the teachers as well, the teachers that want to educate the children and deal with many behavioral distractions and other type things, telephones that weren't distractions when we were in school, and the Chromebook issues as well. Now, I asked one of the, one of the assistant deans at one of the high schools, isn't there something that could be done to limit access to the Chromebooks while the students are in class. And I was told, no, there's nothing we can do about it. That's just the way they are. And I'm concerned about that. Who's controlling the classroom? Is it the teachers? Is it the parents working with the teachers? Or is it somebody that's providing these Chromebooks that interfere, that sometimes can be a great tool and be very helpful, but many times are detrimental to the students paying attention and are distraction? And I know myself, sometimes it's hard to just focus on what I'm doing at my job or different things. We can be distracted. I think it's ironic that this evening, one of the plays that Hampshire had was the internet is a distraction. Oh, a kitten. But as children are learning, and one of the answers I was given, well, children need to learn how to control their access or their desire to log on, to look at these things. But do we want to put that temptation right in front of them while they're there to get an education? Every minute in the classroom, I think, is critical and needs to be used appropriately, and Chromebooks can be a real serious distraction. So I encourage you to look into this and consider, can something be done on this? And if something has been done, please let me know, or please direct me. I'm not here to say, this is what you need to do. But as a concerned citizen, concerned parent, this is something that I would be willing to help out in any way. I don't know how, but if I can, please let me know. I'm on your side along with you, and my intention was just to bring this to your attention if you're not already aware of it. And I may have left something out, but those are the main points. And if you have written that testimony of the prisoner of war, if that's documented somewhere, I would love to read that. Thank you for your time.
I'm sorry, do you have an email address?
Yes, I do.
So, Madam President, members of the board, not as a response, but we will have both Mr. Emrickson's team and Ms. Pasco's team reach out to provide an explanation of how the district does put safeguards in place to prevent student access. And to explain, as the speaker shared, there is a responsibility there, whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a laptop, whether it's any other device. There are distractions that took place in the 70s in classrooms. So the reality is, yes, it's access, but we do have steps and we do have structures in place that filter content, and Securely is one of those. So as Securely identifies inappropriate websites and parents receive a monthly report of that, our team is constantly vetting those websites to make a determination if there's gaming linked to it or even chat room features. It is, unfortunately, the new Cold War. Every time we whitelist or cancel out a site, another one students find and it pops up. So we do continue to work on that, but I will again have Mr. Emrickson, who presented this evening, who is in charge of our technology department and supervises our Chromebook technology and the security measures behind it, as well as Ann Pasco, who supports our digital learning and innovation on the instructional side, who can reach out to you and listen more and provide some input, and then maybe gather some more input from you as some additional steps and precautions that we might want to take. You're welcome. Thank you.
And that's an excellent idea for a project for you, Mrs. Kopaz. Writing down the story. I bet you could even, oh, is it? Because you could probably get the tape recording of tonight's meeting and just, have it transcribed.
You know, I had not even planned on saying that. I don't even know where that came from, so I apologize.
Okay, that concludes public participation. Any legislative updates? Okay. We're going to move on to item 11. I want to point out that 11.6, there's been an update regarding the number of students on that, but that would be backup information. So it's motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Fiorentino?
Stevens.
Aye.
Fiorentino, aye. Kopaz.
Aye.
McNicholas.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
And Scarpino.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Motion to approve consent items, item number 12.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Fiorentino?
Stevens.
Aye.
Scarpino.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
McNicholas.
Aye.
Kopaz.
Aye.
Fiorentino, aye. Passes 6-0.
Okay, any updates on board committee reports?
Finance went into more depth on the budget. You got the overview tonight, but we went into line item detail, so you heard it.
Can I just comment to Finance Committee and Ms. Harkin? I want to appreciate the response to the board's concerns. I mean, I know I was one, I can't remember who else asked for prioritization to get back to where, and you've done that, so thank you. I appreciate you addressing the concerns of myself and others.
Any other board comments, discussion items?
With regard to the Board Construction Committee, I just want to call your attention to the item that one of the items that we approved was the salt dome. Did you know that we used to, up until now, we have loaded salt on the spreaders bag by bag? I mean, I'm flabbergasted to find that out, and I can't believe it's taken us so long to do this. And Dan, hats off to you again, my friend. We're going to save money, we're going to build a salt dome, and we're going to make it less backbreaking. So it's just a wonderful thing. I was flabbergasted when I realized we didn't do that. Good job.
Okay, item 14.5, we need a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, negotiations, real estate, and litigation with possible employee discipline action to follow.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Fiorentino?
Fiorentino, aye. McNicholas.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Scarpino.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So